Welcome to Rewind the Tape. Every week I take a real trade from my live sessions, slow it all the way down, and walk you through exactly what the order flow was showing me at the time I took the trade. We'll do the good trades, the bad trades, all of it. Subscribe if you want a new one each week, and come watch the next one happen with us live. Now, on to the trade. All right. Build on the short side. We'll see what happens here. They're going to come find me here in just a second if they can get through this huge group of sellers. All right, that's new lows, so my stop is going to go to just in front of, just on the other side of that imbalance. I'm gonna fill right there. There's just so many buyers, and like we're tapering on volume profile, which I also don't like. So not gonna be a, what do they call it, a dick for a tick there. I'm just gonna take that. So I have one runner on. That would come off down here at like 30.65 if we push that far. And we're filled there. That was easily my best trade of the week. Hello everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of Rewind the Tape. In this series, I take a trade from the live stream and I break it down slower so that we can look at the order flow, kind of go through my thought process as to what I was seeing, why I took the position that I took, and in this case, I was a little bit early, and we'll talk about how I can improve on that, because that's something that I'm always kind of looking to do. So these reviews are very much for you guys and educational, and it also helps me hopefully improve as I look back at the price action and be able to analyze it a little more closely when it's not quite as chaotic as it is when I'm trading live. So right now, we'll kind of set the stage for this trade as the depth of market is trading here at only a quarter speed. So this is Friday's session. On Thursday's session, the NASDAQ broke a very important level at 3,060 to the upside. And then this is the start of Friday's session where we've mostly gone sideways. We had Michigan consumer data come out around 10 o'clock. There was a brief pop, and then the market started to sell and broke the opening range low. So we're sitting here at about 9:30 Central Time. We're looking at what the NASDAQ is doing below the opening range low. We've already put in one buy and balance here on the way down at 156. That's the first level that I'm looking at for an interest in a reoffer for a short. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is that, and I talked about this in episode 1, is I'm looking for something interesting to trade against, an imbalance, the opening range low, some kind of confluence between the two, some kind of interesting thing that happens on the depth of market. I kind of am trying to build myself a little bit of a narrative for why I want to get into this particular trade. So I'm going to speed this up just a little bit. I'll go up to 1x speed. We just made new lows. Price is now trying to bounce. You're seeing quite a bit of size get thrown here. And here's the first interesting thing that I note as I'm watching the depth of market. So I'll slow this down a little bit and we'll walk through it together. Let me lock this so that we can not have it bounce around. So you have 100 contracts wanting to buy here at 151.25. I also have my orders on my depth of market set to MBO, which stands for market by order, which basically means that each of the orders can get segmented out. So instead of it being, say, 100 one lot orders, you can actually see a little faded rectangle right there. So there's about 100 contracts here that are one order, one participant wanting to buy 100 contracts at that price, and then a few other smaller ones. That lets me know that not only is this a large order in general, but it's not a cluster of buyers, it's one large participant. So it's somebody who has enough size to probably be institution level that is looking at buying one particular price. Now, let's watch what they do. I'm just gonna walk through. So they step up, right? In the midst of what is actually a fairly choppy area, they actually step up price a full point and a half. Now, that's not a lot, but if you're thinking about buying 100 contracts of the NASDAQ, A 1.5 makes quite a bit of difference. And so what I think about when I start to see large participants start to kind of chase price is it makes me think that one side, in this case the buyers, are a bit overconfident, right? Like, I think most of the time that I chase price, I typically get punished, right? I get a bad entry, my stop is in the wrong place, I'm kind of like overconfident that whatever I'm doing is trying to work. So same kind of thing here. They could have easily waited and gotten filled, but they're antsy enough. And I think that after Thursday's rally, buyers were really looking to take this higher, and it ultimately doesn't play out that well. So they get filled at their new bid, and now we'll let price trade a little faster again. So I kind of just note this in my head. I'm like, I've seen a large buyer chasing price a little bit. As a sort of like one event, probably not that interesting, but I kind of file it away to be like, oh, somebody's chasing. Now there's a second 100 contract order. Now what is this one going to do? So they jump up again, this time chasing from 153 to 155, and then they also get filled. You can see all of that getting filled on the time and sales here so that you know that the price actually, or that order actually got filled and it wasn't just pulled at the last second. That's something that can definitely happen. So I'm just kind of noting to myself at this point, I'm interested in particularly being short, and now I've seen two really large buyers chasing in the low 150s, right around the imbalance level that I'm kind of interested in fading. So we're going to speed this up. I'm going to put this up to 5x. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw from like 154 to 164, 165. So like a 10 or 11 point range is where I'm kind of like, this is where I've seen a lot of size going off. I've seen some buyers chasing towards the lower end of this. I have a sell, or I have a buy imbalance in this area. And then price ultimately rejects in this area again. So it sells off this imbalance level the first time that it tests it. It's going to then bounce and come back up to it. I'll zoom in just a little bit. Price is going to come up and then reject the same area. You'll also note, I'm going to slow this down just for a second, that as you're watching the time and sales, I have a 5 minimum on here, so no orders smaller than 5 show up, just to cut out a lot of the kind of like one contract noise. And you'll see price coming up here to test the bottom again and get rejected yet again with another sell imbalance. So I'm seeing all these imbalances that ScalperIQ is flagging with our imbalance study. And I'm also seeing it show up here on the delta on the side of the depth of market. So there's just a lot of large participants happening in here. If it's all one lot orders, they're just not going to show here, but we're seeing 18s, 30s, 10s. So there's a lot of big players that are trying to get into position here. That makes me more interested in price. It also makes me a little hesitant because I know that if there's large participants down here, that there's a chance that if I'm trying to short and sellers get offside with how big their orders are, that price is going to like run very quickly to the upside. So I'm going to speed this back up. And I'm going to go, so this is ultimately about to be where I take my entry. Now I'm going to talk about why I didn't like this entry, even though the trade actually worked. I got to my take profit, ultimately made money. But basically at this point, I've seen the buy imbalance. I've seen us test it once. I saw us make new lows off of it. I saw us test it again and then go right back to the same low. And so at this point, this is like the third test of this area. And I'm a little antsy to be getting short because I really do think that they're going to get down to at least my 3100 level. And I was looking at a retest of that big level on NQ that's had a hard time breaking up until Thursday, which is around 3060. So I think in my head, kind of what's playing out is I have a decent chance of getting a lower target at 3060. It should be relatively easy, haha, to get my take profit here at 3100, right? So I'm a little bit antsy to be getting on the short side. I'm a little nervous about getting left behind, and we'll find out that that's very much not what happened. I had plenty of time to be getting into a short position here, but I'm ultimately going to get short, and I'll play it out here on the DOM so that we can actually see my wonderful air. So we're coming up here. And as we kind of get here and hesitate just a little bit, I put my order in. Okay, so I'm going to pause real quick. And then as I do that, I'm going to put my stop order here at 182. Now here's what I don't like about that, and what was kind of a miscalculation on my part live, is that I wanted to use both the opening range low, which is the 169 3/4 here, this purple line, as well as this delta zone from the lows right off the open here. But really the edge, like this delta zone is kind of an area, right? And really me putting my stop order right at the top of it is not really the most ideal placement. More ideal placement probably would have been 188, something like that, 185. And really, like, I know a lot of you might watch and be like, that's kind of splitting hairs, like what is 5 or 6 points? Well, I'm using a 20-point stop most of the time. And so 5 to 8 points is sometimes the difference between a trade working and a trade not working. So as I get short here briefly, so price pulls back, and that was why I put my offer in. Like, it got into the 160s again. It rejected around this imbalance level again. It's rejecting the area that I've kind of marked out on the depth of market. And then they're just going to run it through here, and we'll see kind of ultimately what plays out. Now, I'm going to pause it. And what I'm going to show is that the thing that I kind of missed because I was too busy looking at my entry around 160 is I wasn't really paying attention to the big order clustering that was starting to happen in the mid 70s. Whenever you have liquidity that's really close to price like this, particularly large orders and clusters of large orders, the market loves to go fill those before it decides to do anything else. It just like is a magnet for liquidity. And so had I seen these orders, or at least weighted these orders a little more carefully, I think I could have got a better entry. So even you'll see as like price is getting close to it, there's more sellers showing up. There's now a 22 and a 32, 10s, 15s, 12s, but they're really close to my stop, which I don't like. So I'm going to speed this up, and I'm actually just going to pop through here. And this is where I almost get stopped. So we're just kind of bouncing. I'm a little bit in the money here. Price is kind of bouncing around. But what I don't particularly like to see when this was happening live is that the imbalance level that it had rejected multiple times, it is now using as support. And these are things that, like, I try not to read too much into them live. Like, I can kind of have the thought, I don't like that, but I've already kind of put my risk on, and you'll see now price pop up. They grab one of those orders, and they're going to try to grab the other one. This one they grabbed, and it happened so fast that even our depth of market recorder only caught the prints, but not the actual movement, because they refilled the offer so fast. So I didn't get stopped, but ultimately on a 20-point stop, I took 15.5 points of heat. It's not ideal. Not ideal by my standards. So I was a little too antsy to be getting into a short position here. The rest of this trade plays out, and ultimately what you see is, had I not been chasing, I don't really think I was chasing, I was just a little early, is that price very much establishes, you know, my entry ends up being at 936. The market finally decides to start moving down at 953. I had almost 20 minutes to take a position. Now, you don't know that ahead of time, but I definitely could have been in observation mode a little bit more rather than try to put an order in. Because ultimately price comes up here and really just starts to defend in this 160 zone. So I'll scoot this forward right to before we sell off. And so what I'm looking at whenever I'm looking for price to defend a zone is I have another big order that wants to sell up here. I have some other big orders near the top of this. We're down below the opening range low. And as price kind of like comes back into this area, like you're seeing the buyers really push through this. And then as they push through, they'll find a price and just a lot more shows up on the offer. So they're like here, and then they're going to get pushed backwards. And they just can't make any progress. Like they're just stuck. No matter how fast it's trading up and trading up into this price, they just can't roll it back over. So I'm going to zoom out. Ultimately, price rolls over. we make new lows, I take a partial off at 30,100, and I take my runner off at 30.70 or 30.65, somewhere in that range. So all in all, was a good trade, was a proper read. What we saw was sellers defending a level and defending the opening range low. I had just enough things to be able to be kind of like in my favor. This last cluster of sellers probably saved my position, and stop on just on the other side of the delta zone is really helpful. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. Feel free to tune into the live stream this week, and or stay tuned and subscribe for episode 3.